Welcome to Astrid's Tales, and this is today's story.
I just signed a 2-year lease for the house directly next door to my boyfriend's other family.
Right now I'm standing in my new kitchen,
watching through the window as my boyfriend of 5 years, the man I thought was on a business trip in Chicago, unloads groceries for a woman who is wearing an identical engagement ring to mine. He thinks I'm at home in Seattle, crying because I miss him. He has no idea that by tomorrow morning, I'll be the one knocking on their door to ask for a cup of sugar. Am I the asshole for not breaking up with him yet? To understand how I arrived here, standing in an empty house with a heart full of ice, you have to understand Mark. Mark is a consultant. On the surface, it's a respectable, if vague, job title. In reality, it's the most dangerous profession a cheater can have. It provides the perfect camouflage for a double life. His work allegedly required him to travel from Tuesday to Friday, every single week. This schedule was not a bug in our relationship. It was a feature. It explained his absences, his occasional unavailability, and the geographical distance that made his deception possible. For 5 years, we were the it couple among our Seattle friends. Our life was a curated collection of perfect moments. He was attentive, wealthy, and unfailingly generous. When he was home, from Friday evening to Tuesday morning, he was 100% present. He'd leave his work phone in his briefcase, his attention solely on me. We lived in a beautiful, modern condo overlooking Puget Sound, a space I owned, a fact he conveniently omitted when entertaining his colleagues. He spoke often and with great detail about our future, the names of our hypothetical children, the vineyard in Napa we'd retired to, how much he hated the lonely hotel rooms and the ache of being away from me. I trusted him with my life. My trust was absolute, a fortress built on a foundation of consistent behavior and grand romantic gestures. I never checked his phone. I never questioned the late flights from O'Hare or the emergency client meetings that would keep him an extra night. Why would I? He sent flowers to my office every Wednesday without fail, a vibrant bouquet arriving from whichever city he was supposedly in, with a note professing his love and his impatience to return home to me. He was the perfect man, a meticulously crafted fiction I was all too willing to believe. That was until a random suggested friend popped up on my Instagram feed 3 weeks ago, and the entire artifice of my life began to unravel. Her name was Sarah. Her profile picture showed a smiling, wholesome-looking woman with kind eyes, standing in front of a charming suburban house. We had 0 mutual friends, no shared connections. Yet the inscrutable algorithm of social media decided to place her directly in my path. Her profile was public. I clicked on it, my thumb hovering over the screen out of idle curiosity, expecting to see a stranger's life. Instead, I saw my dining room table. The shock was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. It wasn't my exact table, of course, but it was identical. A custom-made piece of reclaimed wood with a distinctive trestle base that Mark had surprised me with for my birthday last year. He had told me it was a one-of-a-kind creation from a boutique furniture maker in Oregon. Seeing its twin in this stranger's home was the first loose thread. I started pulling. I scrolled deeper. My casual curiosity morphed into a frantic, obsessive search. I saw a photograph of a golden retriever, a goofy, lovable-looking dog named Barnaby according to the caption. A dog had always claimed to be severely allergic to dogs. It was the reason we couldn't get one, despite my lifelong desire for a canine companion. But there he was in a photo from last Christmas, wearing a garish matching sweater with Sarah, and a man whose face was conveniently turned away from the camera as he hugged the dog. I didn't need to see his face. I knew those hands. I knew the shape of his shoulders. And I knew that watch, the Rolex Submariner I had bought him for our 3rd anniversary, the one I had saved for months to purchase. It was his most prized possession. The man in the photo was Mark Dote. The next 48 hours were a descent into a digital rabbit hole. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I barely moved from my sofa, the glow of my phone illuminating the slow, dawning horror on my face. I didn't cry. The pain was too sharp, too profound for tears. I went numb, my mind working with the cold, detached precision of the data analyst I was trained to be. I was no longer a grieving girlfriend. I was an investigator compiling a dossier on a con man. I scrolled through 6 years of her life. I pieced together the narrative he had so carefully segregated. They had been married for 6 years. They had a 4-year-old daughter named Emily. The charming suburban house was in a quiet cul-de-sac outside of Portland, Oregon, a 3-hour drive from our condo in Seattle. His life was a masterpiece of logistics. The business trips to Chicago were drives down I-5. The consulting was a performance of fatherhood. While I was in Seattle, dutifully watering the plants and waiting for his "I landed safely in Chicago" texts, he was 3 hours south, playing daddy in a different time zone of commitment. The lies were staggering in their detail and audacity. He had 2 sets of clothes, 2 sets of friends, 2 sets of holiday traditions. He had 2 fiancés, because when I looked closer at Sarah's pictures, I saw it. On her left hand, a diamond ring. An engagement ring identical to the one he had given me 6 months ago. A custom-designed piece he swore was as unique as our love. We weren't just dating. We were both engaged to the same man. Most people, upon discovering such a profound betrayal, would have erupted. They would have packed his bags, thrown his meticulously tailored suits onto the lawn, and called a lawyer. But that scenario presented a problem. Mark didn't technically own anything in our Seattle condo. I did. My family has significant money, and my career in data analytics provides me with an income that far surpasses his. Mark enjoyed playing the role of the high-flying provider, but I was the one with the real assets. He was a guest in my life, a life I have foolishly allowed him to co-opt. If I confronted him, he would lie. He was a professional manipulator, a man who had successfully partitioned his entire existence. He would gaslight me, twist the narrative, and paint me as the hysterical, paranoid girlfriend. Then he would disappear, retreating to his safe house in Portland, leaving me with the wreckage. And Sarah? She would remain a victim, a wife who had no idea her husband was a bigamist in spirit. If not in law, a simple breakup was not enough. The punishment had to fit the crime. I didn't want him to just lose me. I wanted him to lose everything. I wanted him to lose his carefully constructed reality, his reputation, his sanity. I wanted to watch the moment his 2 worlds collided, and I wanted to be the director of the grand finale. My analytical mind took over. The anger and grief were channeled into a cold, methodical plan. I used a real estate shell company, a tool I had at my disposal from my family's property ventures, to look up the house directly next door to theirs in the Portland suburb. It was a rental, and by some stroke of cosmic vengeful fate, the tenants had just moved out. The listing had gone live that morning. I didn't hesitate. I contacted the property manager and offered to pay the entire 2-year lease upfront, in cash. An offer like that silences all questions. By the end of the day, the house was mine. I emailed my boss, informing her I needed to work remotely for the foreseeable future to handle a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie. I was about to handle a family emergency. His family. Then I waited for Tuesday, the day he would leave me to fly to Chicago. The goodbye was a masterclass in his duplicity. He held me in the doorway of my Seattle condo, his face a perfect mask of sorrow. "I hate leaving you, babe," he whispered, kissing me deeply. "This week feels longer than usual. I'll call you when I get to the hotel in Chicago. I love you." "I love you too," I replied, my voice steady, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. I waited exactly 2 hours. Enough time for him to be well on his way down the highway. Then I got into my own car and drove south to Portland. I arrived at my new house at 6 o'clock in the evening. The street was quiet, idyllic, the very picture of suburban tranquility. I pulled into the garage, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I looked across the driveway at his house. His black SUV was parked in the driveway. The windows were warm and glowing. Through the large picture window in their living room, I saw him. He was picking up his little girl Emily and spinning her around. Her delighted squeals were faint but audible. He looked happy. He looked at home. The sight was a knife twisting in my chest, but the pain was immediately transmuted into fuel. It solidified my resolve. The house was empty, echoing, and smelled of fresh paint. My few boxes of essentials were stacked in the corner. I had arranged for a moving company to bring the rest of my things later in the week, under the guise of a standard relocation. For now, my only furniture was an air mattress on the floor of the master bedroom. The wall my mattress was against was the wall we shared. I spent the night lying in the dark, staring at that wall, a silent observer to a life I was never meant to see. I could hear the muffled sounds of their evening routine, the sound of their television, the indistinct murmur of their conversations. I pressed my ear against the plaster, and his voice became clearer. I heard him saying the same sweet nothings to her that he had whispered to me just that morning. "You're the only thing that matters, Sarah. I'm so glad to be home, away from all that business nonsense." I pulled out my phone and started recording. I captured the audio, the proof of his lies, the soundtrack to his betrayal. The man who was supposedly in a hotel room in Chicago was, at that very moment, reading a bedtime story to his daughter in the room next to mine. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake all night, listening to the rhythm of a life he had stolen from me, and planned the first scene of my revenge. This morning, I got dressed with the precision of a soldier preparing for battle. I chose a cheerful sundress, something a friendly new neighbor might wear. I did my hair and makeup exactly the way he likes it, soft waves, a natural look. And then I slipped on the engagement ring he had given me, its diamond catching the morning light, a brilliant, cold symbol of his treachery. I took a deep breath, walked out my front door, across the shared driveway, and rang their doorbell. The door opened, and I came face to face with Sarah. She was beautiful, even more so in person. She had a kind, open face, though there were tired lines around her eyes, the hallmark of a mother to a young child. She was wearing yoga pants and a simple t-shirt, a coffee mug in her hand. "Hi," I said, my voice a cascade of fake, neighborly cheer. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I just moved in next door. I'm still waiting on my kitchen boxes to arrive, and I was just wondering if I could borrow a cup of sugar. I'm a total mess without my morning coffee." She smiled, a genuine welcoming smile that made my stomach clench with a pang of guilt. This woman was not my enemy. She was his victim, just as I was. "Oh, of course. No problem at all. Welcome to the neighborhood. It's so nice to have someone in that house again." "I'm Sarah." "I'm Maya," I replied, extending my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." As she turned to go to her kitchen, I heard his voice, muffled from another room. "Honey, who is it?" And then he walked around the corner from the kitchen into the foyer. He was holding a spatula, a faint smear of what looked like pancake batter on his cheek. He was wearing an apron that said Grill Sergeant, a gag gift I had given him 2 Christmases ago. He saw me. The transformation was instantaneous and absolute. It wasn't just that the color drained from his face. It was as if his entire being imploded. His soul seemed to exit his body, leaving behind a hollow, terrified shell. His eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated panic. The charming, confident man I knew ceased to exist, replaced by a cornered, desperate animal. The spatula slipped from his grasp and hit the hardwood floor with a wet, pathetic thud. Sarah looked from his horrified face to my composed one, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Mark? What's wrong? Do you know Maya?" I held his gaze, my expression a perfect mask of polite curiosity. I didn't flinch. I didn't waver. I let him dangle in the horrifying silence for a few long seconds before I delivered the first surgical strike. "Oh," I said, tilting my head as if just noticing the resemblance. "We haven't met officially, but it's funny, he looks exactly like my boyfriend, Mark. He's away on a business trip in Chicago right now." Isn't that the craziest coincidence? Mark is currently hyperventilating in their guest bathroom. He mumbled something about feeling sick and fled from the room, leaving me alone with his bewildered wife. Sarah, oblivious and kind, is in the kitchen making me a cup of coffee. I am sitting on their living room sofa, petting Barnaby the dog, who seems to have taken an instant liking to me. The irony is not lost on me. My phone just buzzed with a text from Mark. "Maya, please." "I can explain." Don't say anything. I'll give you whatever you want. I haven't replied. I'm sipping the coffee Sarah just handed me. And I'm telling her all about my wonderful husband-to-be. I'm describing our beautiful condo in Seattle. I'm telling her how we're planning a destination wedding in Hawaii next summer. With every detail I share, I am painting a portrait of her husband's other life, and she is listening with the innocent sympathy of a new friend. I'm not leaving yet. My 2-year lease has just begun. I want to see how long he can keep the mask on while I am living right next door. I want to watch him try to sneak out of his own house to go to work, only to see me sitting on my porch, sipping my coffee and waving at him. I want to become Sarah's best friend. I want to be invited to their barbecues, to their daughter's birthday parties. I want to become so enmeshed in their life that he cannot escape my presence. He thought he could live 2 lives. He doesn't realize that I'm about to merge them into one all-consuming nightmare. And I will be there to watch every second of it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, click like and subscribe.